Today we are back on the Old Croton Aqueduct Trail to get into some famous Westchester gravel, and that got me thinking about the stark contrast between biking in Westchester and biking on Long Island. And I mean all types of biking, from roadies to gravel grinders to XC warriors and even enduro bros. Now before I get into this very New York centralized topic, I just want to say that I am no historian and I'm not trying to unequivocally say one county is better than the other. My only point with this video is to discuss the palpable difference between the two counties for anyone interested in integrating cycling into as much of their life as possible. With that in mind, I must bring up the career and decisions of Robert Moses. For a while now, I've been reading Robert Caro's infamous book, The Power Broker, which details Robert Moses and the fall of New York. I'm still reading it and am currently about 2/3 through this 1200 plus page behemoth of a book, but it has been a very eye-opening read for me growing up on Long Island. Nearly every aspect of my day-to-day life has been shaped by Robert Moses in some way, with his South Shore home being a couple miles from my house and his Belmont Lake State Park headquarters being my nearest gravel trail system. Luckily, it is a great spot for that gravel riding. However, Robert Moses is notorious for amassing probably the most unchecked power in the entire history of public works in this country. With that power, he created the parkways that sliced up Long Island into a region of the haves and the have-nots. These roads were made to carry city residents along a beautiful stretch of wooded highway right into luscious forest and sprawling beaches. However, many will realize that these parkways have very low bridges, which made it impossible for city buses that might be carrying minorities to use these roads to transport low-income families to these parks that he specifically wanted wealthier car drivers to have access to. Furthermore, one may notice that the North Shore of Long Island has significantly fewer state parks than the South Shore. The ultra-wealthy robber barons like Otto Kahn, the Rockefellers, the Pratts, etc. played a heavy hand in ensuring the Northern State Parkway wouldn't let any city riffraff drive into their elite neighborhoods until they were way past them, dozens upon dozens of miles from the city limits. All this is to say that Robert Moses drew Long Island and eventually New York City and Westchester with a racist and classist stroke that has forever shaped the tri-state area. So what does this have to do with biking? Well, I feel like it has a cascading effect on the quality of life for anyone who enjoys riding a bike, wants to commute by bike, or is forced to bike due to the prohibitively expensive nature of owning a car in New York State. On Long Island, the parkways are always jam-packed with cars, day in and day out, and many miles are barely wooded at this point since the density of Long Island has forced many suburbs to push people's backyards right up to the endless noise of these parkways. Granted, Long Island's population density is almost 5,000 people per square mile, and Westchester is roughly half of that density. However, my main distinction that I want to point out is that Westchester has kept a semblance of park in its parkways. This video we are riding the Old Croton Aqueduct Trail, which largely follows Route 9 along the Hudson River, but in the center of Westchester you're able to ride two other paved paths from north to south. The Putnam County Trailway and the Bronx River Trailway, which follow the Taconic Parkway and Bronx River Parkway respectively. This provides cyclists with three options to ride their bikes north and south across a county that is significantly less wide than Long Island is long. These trailways are following these parkways and major roads in Westchester, while still being separated from them by a grade difference, fully blocked off by real road barriers. On Long Island, the most significant trailway stretches from Syosset all the way down to Jones Beach and runs east to Captree State Park now, which if you love the beach, it's awesome. It also provides great connection to Bethpage and Stillwell, which are two of Long Island's most trafficked mountain bike trail systems. My only gripe with this is that once you reach the South Shore towns that you may want to grab a bite to eat, or stop for coffee, or visit your local bike shop, it's no longer a designated path, and so you must contend with many aggressive drivers who are merging off of Sunrise Highway onto these main streets, not necessarily looking out for cyclists. In Westchester, as you can see by this ride, we are riding in separate wooded swaths of land that still feel like you're in the middle of nature, but also popping out into literally dozens of towns along your journey, which makes it feel more encouraging to go where you want to go, rather than where you're forced to go because there's only one destination that the biking infrastructure protects you in going to. I hope that makes some sense, but I think my next point furthers this one. Mass transit connectivity via bicycle is much easier in Westchester than on Long Island. As I just mentioned, these small towns that you pass through on the Aqueduct Trail all have train stations nearby. The Bronx River Trailway literally follows the train tracks as well as the Bronx River Parkway for a dozen miles, all utilizing the same swath of land while still keeping them separate enough that you don't think you're about to be mowed down by a car on your left and a train on your right. I wish that New York had mass transit that encouraged people to bike to and from stops and stations, but unfortunately bikes are largely prohibited during peak commuting times. However, if you feel comfortable enough to lock up an old bike at the station, that is still something worthwhile to cycling residents. Making it feel safe and accessible allows people to incorporate more biking into their life, and I think we can all agree that that's a good thing. It would be really cool if the trains were built like some in Japan, where they have special train cars, maybe one per train, for people using bikes that feature standing bike racks in lieu of a third of the seats or so. To continue with the theme of connectivity, these 3 trails or paths in Westchester provide you pretty convenient access to many of the sanctioned mountain bike trail systems in the county. This unfortunately cannot be said for Long Island, where many trail systems require a drive on a highway or parkway to access and would be otherwise very risky to cycle to these trails. You often need to cross significant 4 or 6 lane roads and ride on the non-existent shoulder of some of these roads multiple times to get anywhere meaningful, especially a state park for that matter. Another positive of Westchester's cycling infrastructure is that it still carries you to historical parts of the county. The route we took, of course, went to the Croton Dam and Reservoir, but also the Lyndhurst Mansion along the Hudson River. To me, it just feels like you're experiencing some part of Westchester's history with the various abandoned structures of the Old Croton Aqueduct zipping by you. On Long Island, most sections of cycling paths are right next to 6-lane highways or old railroad tracks that have been turned into paved rail trails that go nowhere because the railroad doesn't follow that route anymore. Whatever wooded gravel double track there is often butted right up against people's backyards or running along a polluted creek that has litter and oil floating along. On Long Island, everything centers around the beaches, and to me that leaves a lot of Long Island's natural greenery and beauty cut off from your day-to-day life. I'll admit I have not traveled much in my life. I've been from Quebec, Canada all the way down to the US Virgin Islands, but that's it. I've yet to visit Europe or Asia, and I know the way they build their towns and cities is very different due to a plethora of extenuating circumstances, but it still makes me hopeful that New York, which I believe is one of the most special places in the world, has the capability to improve the way people bike. This improves our physical and mental health, makes our roadways safer for all users, and builds stronger communities that are connected by bikes and foot traffic rather than putting cars first at every chance we get. I've mentioned it before, but Ithaca in upstate New York is a fantastic example of people using bikes to replace their cars for many day-to-day activities, and I'm blown away by the fitness and energy of the residents there. They are happier, healthier, and share a great sense of community that really makes it feel welcoming. And I really hope that more of the tri-state area can foster these kinds of results and protect the access we do have for generations to come. So with those random thoughts concluded, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if I got something completely wrong, and remember, stay venturing, my friends.